What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot, and welcome to another edition of Disney 101. We are officially of legal drinking age. It is the 21st edition of the show. It's great to be here with each and every one of you guys after a one-week hiatus, but we're excited to be back here and discussing all things Disney. On the other side of the world is my main man, Steve. Steve, how are you doing today?
Good. Fighting a little bit of a cold, but not as bad as the cold that you guys have there up north. I'm sure.
Oh, it's absolutely brutal. I am in the process of I think it's 5 degrees here in New York City. I drove area to work today at about 6 o'clock, and it was it's bone chilling awful. So you're definitely a lot luckier being down there. I am heading out to Arizona on Wednesday, and it cannot come soon enough.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, just terrible. I will say Steve is presented in beautiful HD today, by the way, looking like $1,000,000. We've had some trouble with you being a bit pixelated, but I think that I think you look great today.
Oh, thanks.
Very, very good. So, but one of the things that I wanted to quickly touch on is, I don't know if you know this, but exactly 1 year ago, this couple days ago, was my bachelor party over in Walt Disney World.
Yeah, I knew it was coming around. I knew it was right around Martin Luther King Day. That's yeah. We had family in town that actually came around the same time last year as well. So it was a nice little remembrance this week. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been very cool. One of my buddies who was on the trip was sending me photos throughout the week, and it was good to reminisce about that. And we actually just got our wedding video as well, so it's been a cool week. But that trip down to Disney is one of these things. I don't know if you remember when we were very, very young. I'd say probably 20-ish. We were both coaching for basketball for there was something. We were both coaching basketball for something.
I believe it was B'nai B'rith.
A B'nai B'rith youth organization.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Which I had no business. I mean, like, I was never even a part of as a kid. I don't think you were either.
No.
We were both coaching for them. And I remember at that time literally being at a point where I was telling you that I wanted to go to Disney with a bunch of my friends, and you were saying something like, oh, it's probably expensive, and I don't know if all of your friends are going to want to go. And I think at that time I set the plan in motion for my bachelor party in Disney World. So it was like 10 years in the making, and we finally got a chance to do it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time. So eventually, hopefully soon, we will get an opportunity to get maybe a couple of the other guys on and be able to have a little show dedicated to that. But this week, we are going to talk about all things Disney Vacation Club. There were some changes that came down recently for folks that are DVC members, DVC owners, and we'll be able to kind of chat with you guys about that. Also wanted to I have not had an opportunity yet to watch the new Spider-Man trailer that came out. It was one of these things that had broke, I'd say, about a week or so ago. They released the trailer for it. I knew this was big news because a lot of people were getting really excited to see Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's going to be in the movie. And so people were like, oh, you got to see this. And everyone was telling me to check it out. But of course, it's not what I do. I wait until we get on the air to do it. So I'm excited to check that out. So we're also going to get into checking that out, and that should be fun. But before we do any of that, Steve, is there anything in the news that you want to touch on?
I mean, it's not really news so much as it is just kind of, with the new Festival of the Arts happening at Epcot right now that actually started on Friday. There's a lot of, normal stuff that happens during these festivals with the extra booths and the, musical performances and a lot of that stuff. But I do want something that maybe a lot of people kind of might not think about, because it's something that's, I think it's unique, at least for this time around. So there's going to be hidden Disney characters.
Something that maybe a lot of people kind of might not. Sorry. Somehow I hit the thing there. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was wondering.
No, it popped up. It popped up twice. The Hangout. I guess because before I had it off, and then once you were talking, it kicked back in.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. There's going to be hidden Disney character art all around the World Showcase. And I don't want to say too much about what it's going to be to kind of spoil it a little bit. But keep an eye out because there's a lot of really cool random hidden spots that a lot of Disney characters like. You can see, Mushu from Mulan, Timon and Pumbaa from Lion King, Pascal from Tangled, and a bunch of other Disney characters that are going to be just all around. And I think it adds a really cool layer of just a little bit more of Disney magic into it. So it's really cool to check it out if you're going to be at Epcot during the Festival of the Arts.
And so, what does that mean? Those guys are going to be characters of those guys are going to be there?
No, so it's going to be on. It's just like like in the background, like on the buildings and in some of the scenery and like the walkways and stuff. There's character art that's depicted on the buildings that there's normally not there.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was an article posted on yesterday actually, on WDW News Today.
That's really cool. And is that stuff that will be there? How long is the Festival of the Arts for?
So Festival of the Arts is going to be running until, I believe, sometime in February or March, because there's a fairly quick turnaround between that and Flower and Garden Festival. So let's see. So
gotcha.
It doesn't say in the article when it's until, but if you happen to be there, it's kind of one of those really cool kind of cool things that you could totally it's a little bit just like a little scavenger hunt type thing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like I've been to Flower and Garden a bunch of times. I'm not sure how that's happened. I know that just that by coincidence I've gone down to Flower and Garden a whole bunch.
Probably just the timing.
Yeah, could just be the timing, but it's always good. But Festival of the Arts sounds really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on. I know last year they had like the character drawings, like the animation class that they used to have at Hollywood Studios before they had to refurbish that whole area. They took it away. So one of my wife and I's favorite things to do is to kind of go and take those animation classes, because even though we're so bad at it, it's always fun doing it. And
do they teach you like how to draw specific characters?
Yeah, every set time they do it, it's a different character. So like one time we did Goofy, sometimes it's Mickey, sometimes it could be like Winnie the Pooh or like other, really random characters. I think we've done like Stitch and Jack from Nightmare Before Christmas. So like there's a bunch of different characters that they have you draw.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I think we definitely would get a kick out of that. Hopefully it's still going on while we get down there.
It might be.
We're going down, I believe, in the very beginning of March. So hopefully it's happening.
It might be, yeah.
One of the things I wanted to quickly touch on, if you guys are football fans, and I'm sure right now, if you're in New Orleans and if you're in Kansas City, you don't want to talk about it because both teams were robbed fiercely yesterday, and you have every right to be upset about that. But that being said, the Pro Bowl is coming up next week. And the Pro Bowl is coming this year to Camping World Stadium over in Orlando, Florida. For those of you guys who don't know what Camping World Stadium is, it's the old is it called the Orange? It used to be called the Orange Bowl, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think Camping World Stadium, and I'll put it in real quick. Camping World Stadium, I believe, used to be called the Orange Bowl, and it was really kind of a dump and run down, and not in the greatest part of town. However, they rebuilt it up, and it actually does look quite nice now. And it's one of the Citrus Bowl. Sorry, it used to be called the Citrus Bowl.
Okay, yeah.
And now it actually looks quite nice. They brought it back not all that long ago, but they did bring it back, and I'd say they had the arena itself, since it expanded in 2014, can hold up to 65,000 people. So back in the day, this started as a venue that only held 9,000 people and has really kind of brought out, and you could actually have that and everything else. So Camping World Stadium really came out, started to come to light in 2014, I believe. And yes, that was when the renovation happened. $207 million renovation. Now it's actually a really nice stadium. Still not in the greatest part of town, if I'm being honest, but most of the events that are held at Camping World, what they'll do is in the city of Orlando. I don't know if you know this area that I'm talking about, Steve. In the city of Orlando, where the Magic play, there's this really nice little like strip of bars. And usually, if there's an event going on in Camping World Stadium, they will set up shuttles that go directly to and from that area. So you could park like right where the Magic play and then take a shuttle all the way down directly to Camping World Stadium. So you could avoid kind of that, I guess, seedier part of town, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I mean, I really appreciate that kind of thing when they do that, because, like you said, yeah, not necessarily the best, area.
No, it's not. But what I will say is, when we went down there, because the Camping World just hosted WrestleMania a couple years ago, so we went down for WrestleMania, and it's nice. It's a nice area. Even the worst seats in the place are like not elevated so much, so you can still see everything. But what's interesting about the Pro Bowl is what used to be the Pro Bowl used to be that everybody would get a trip to Honolulu. Now you're getting a trip to Orlando, Florida. So in conjunction with the NFL, Disney is doing some stuff for the Pro Bowl, and there's a pep rally coming to Disney Springs next Saturday, January the 26th, and a bunch of team mascots, NFL cheerleaders, mascots will be there. There's going to be NFL and Disney trivia, DJ dance party, and this is going to be taking place at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock next week. Everything's completely complimentary. It sounds like a lot of fun. Do you think you're going to head down there, Steve?
I probably will not, because we had other plans that day. But if we didn't have any other plans, and it's definitely something that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. The NFL Pro Bowl, I feel like, is something that, as far as all-star games go, it's probably the one that I care the least about, and that's really saying something because I don't care too much about the basketball one either. Basketball ones always have the skills competitions, which I think are fun. But the Pro Bowl, I don't think the players take it seriously. Football is obviously a really high-impact sport, so they're there just kind of to hang out. It's usually about like a 60 to 70 game. But it's cool to see these types of things that are going on. I think it would be a lot more fun if they took out the entire day in Disney Springs and had player signings throughout the day. Maybe like even throughout the weekend, kind of like how they do it when the Super Bowl is hosting. When New York had the Super Bowl, we had basically like an entire week filled with activities and NFL players and everything else. I'd say they should do that for some of the Pro Bowlers as well.
I think that would be really cool. I also think that would, Disney Springs can get crowded as it is. So right. I think that would logistically be kind of hard for them to do, but I think it would be really cool.
That would be a bit of a nightmare, though. You're right, because Disney Springs is usually packed, and then if you're bringing in all these fans who are coming from out of town, but it's interesting. It's interesting when I was taking a look at some of the things that they were talking about for the Pro Bowl. Disney's also promoting that there's going to be a kid zone, there's going to be fireworks, there's going to be, if you go down there, they also, what did they say? It was going to be you can go down there for the player red carpet. So you're getting a whole bunch more. So it really looks like even the NFL is kind of aware that fans don't seem to care too much about the Pro Bowl. So if you're going, you're going to get a whole experience.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those also things where, when it used to be in Hawaii, it was more of a, most people aren't going to fly all the way out to the Pro Bowl for, fly all the way out to Hawaii just for the Pro Bowl. But the fact that, Orlando is a destination in and of itself, and they're having it here. So I feel like there kind of has to be a little bit more activities to kind of get people engaged in it.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. One of the other things that I wanted to quickly touch on, have you heard about the newest live action movie that Disney is going to be producing?
Maybe, but why don't you tell me about it anyway?
It is going to be The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yes, yeah, I did hear about that, yeah.
Which I'm very interested to see how they do Quasimodo. Do you think this is going to be something where he's actually a person, or do you think it's going to be something where he's a kind of a stuffed character? How do you think they're going to do it with Hunchback of Notre Dame?
I'm really hoping that it's going to be practical effects. So it's going to be, like makeup and that kind of stuff. I would really hate for it, especially if they're going to be, if it is a true live action and not like the way that Lion King is live action, if it's like actually a true live action movie, to have The Hunchback of Notre Dame, to have Quasimodo just be CGI when everybody else isn't would kind of be a cop out. You know, I mean, one of the things that I like about, you know, a lot of movies, you know, that even if you do have some sort of, you know, special effects and that kind of stuff, the thing that I always loved was the visual, like the practical visual effects. You know, when you go to when you go to a movie and know that all of the stunts and everything were actually done instead of done by CGI, it always kind of adds a little bit something more to the movie.
I completely agree. I think that first off, I'm excited about this because I think the Hunchback of Notre Dame is going to be a situation where they, I feel like it's a movie that for whatever reason is overlooked, so to speak. There isn't a lot about the Hunchback of Notre Dame that's even in the parks at all. Is there anything that's about the Hunchback of Notre Dame in Disney World?
There isn't anything that's in place. Although during the new nighttime show, Happily Ever After, there is a part. There's a very, I'd say about a minute or 2 minutes of the very beginning that Quasimodo is featured in. And I do know that there are, as you know, you've met Judge Frollo, Cloud Frollo, over at Disneyland, so you know he's
Oh yeah,
there.
my guy. Yeah.
But I think actually that I do know that there are characters that from Hunchback that they do have, you know, that the characters are kind of sometimes they're hiding, but every so often they will come out. And I think actually during Mickey's celebration now, they are kind of doing this limited time magic thing again, where we have, you know, some long lost friends coming out. Um,
Really?
yeah, actually, there were some from Chicken Little.
Wow. Wait, when was this?
Chicken Little. So it was actually this past week.
Oh
During
wow.
the yeah. So Chicken Little and one. I don't know. I honestly can't remember what the name of the duck was. It's probably Lucky Duck or something like that. Um, but so there were two characters there that were meeting Great Ear Magic Kingdom. So you know, I'm sure at some point, you know, Quasimodo could make an appearance at some point.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think at some point we should do a which folks deserve to have meet and greets within the Disney realm, because I think there's a lot that are underrepresented. But that's really cool they did Long Lost Friends. I feel like they haven't done Long Lost Friends in like 5 years.
Well, yeah. So there, I mean, they used to kind of do, you know, every year there would be a theme for the year, and you know, you'd kind of have to, you know, they'd play along with the theme. So one of the themes a few years ago was limited time magic, and one of them was, you know, long lost friends week or whatever, and or you know, weekends or something like that, where it would really be like, you know, people that, you know, characters that you never would see in the parks, kind of coming out of the woodwork, and you know, there were some deep pulls, and it's really always fun to see that because you're like, why don't these characters meet normally? Like this would be awesome.
Right. No, exactly. Like I'm a huge, growing up, I loved Darkwing Duck. So I remember when Darkwing Duck, um, and I feel like somebody else too there was another duck who had a big character and a big meet and greet. It was a part of like the Mickey show when I was a little kid. So that's always one that I'm like, man, that would be great to see them, represented at some point. So I always hold out hope for the Long Lost Friends weeks that they come back.
I mean, I would love it because you know it. I mean, it puts a lot of pressures on all these other characters that really have to jump around from one part to the other, you know, all of the time. Like, you know, Aladdin, sure, he gets his magic carpet, and you know, a few people they have magic, but you know, for people like Belle who has to go from park to park with, you know, it's really hard for them to do. So I think it would take some pressure off them.
I agree. I agree 100%. Especially, I mean, they're completely lost. They've been trying to find their way
Yeah.
for several years. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's very cool. I did not know that. And Chicken Little is another movie that I feel like is coming out of the woodwork. But just another touch on the Hunchback movie. It's going to simply be called Hunchback, and it's a big belief. And Cheryl O from Film School Rejects put out a piece that said they're basically going to be putting a real life spin onto the movie of Hunchback Notre Dame, but it's going to be referred to simply as Hunchback. And the idea is that this is actually going to be quite a dark movie. It said the story of Quasimodo has actually been making waves in Hollywood in general. Hunchback marks the second adaptation in the works after Idris Elba announced plans to spearhead a modernized version of the actual novel. Elba will be making the music and helming the feature, the whole mysterious idea. So Disney seems to be cooking up something a little more straightforward when it comes to this live-action movie. Hunchback is said to include elements from the source novel as well as the animated adaptation, notably leaving out the stage musical based on the latter that Menken and Schwartz eventually put together. That said, there is reason to believe that Hunchback has more going for it than just a run-of-the-mill nostalgia, because considering how different the novel was from Disney's animated film, they are making up the live-action update. Combining the two is quite intriguing. So the grit, tragedy, and detail of Notre Dame de Paris, inspired by Disney's darkest movies, despite the fact that the characters live the captivating Romani dancer Esmeralda, the fundamentalist villain Frollo, the superimposed hero Captain Phoebus, who, if any of those happen to be, by the way, just walking down the street past me, I would have no idea who any of them are. So, except for Esmeralda, at least I know her, but some of these guys are quite... and Quasimodo himself will undergo huge makeovers for a significantly lighter narrative. At least they did do that for the animated film. But this seems like they're going to be having a much more darker theme and sticking to the actual story. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see kind of how they go. I feel like Disney really hasn't gone so dark with a lot of their movies.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever read the book or know the story, it gets really dark, especially the ending. It is so dark. But you know, a lot of Disney source material is. You know, I mean, you check out, you know, the original ending of like Little Mermaid and Cinderella, and you know, they've left a lot of the gorier and you know, darker thematic elements out of a lot of these stories for good reason. You know, a lot of these European tales, especially the Germanic and Nordic ones, that, you know, they're all these children's stories are meant to serve as warnings for all of these children. You know, it's like, hey, don't be, you know, this vain, greedy person that wants to live, you know, life somewhere else, or you're going to get turned into sea foam. You know, don't, you know, try and, you know, curtail, you know, someone's dreams and fantasies. Otherwise, your feet are going to get cut off. You know, there's a lot of heavy, dark elements in a lot of these stories that Disney takes their you know, their ideas from. That, yeah, it's, you know, like the ending of The Hunchback of Notre Dame is super dark, but you know, Victor Hugo didn't write this to one day turn it into a kids movie.
Right.
So, you know, so yeah, they had to take out some stuff. They had to, you know, put in the, you know, the wisecracking statues for the comedic relief, you know, but so if they're going, you know, depending on what they take in and leave out and that kind of stuff, it could definitely take on a darker turn. And I think that's also probably why it's one of the less popular movies, just because of the fact that it is kind of one of the darker ones. Even though they did lighten up the source material a little bit, it still has a lot of dark and high concept thematic elements. You know, I mean, there's a lot of religious overtones and stuff like that. So those are probably all reasons why people kind of gloss over Hunchback of Notre Dame. But I think it's one of the most underrated Disney movies.
Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think it's really good. And I'm interested to see kind of a darker take on it for sure as they move into more of a live action movie. So now so they've done now, obviously Lion King's coming out. Jungle Book's already come out. What other movies have they had live action? I know they've done Maleficent.
Maleficent, Cinderella,
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. So
Cinderella.
Yeah.
Oh wow, never saw that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was kind of, you know, it was, I think it was like right after Maleficent.
That's crazy.
But there was a meme that I saw the other day. It was like, and it was about this post. It was about, you know, them coming out with the live action Notre Dame. The meme basically was like, keep it up, Disney. Soon you're going to have to turn Goofy movie into live action too.
Oh, I would love to see Goofy movie in live action. I feel like they're Toy Story too at some point. Are they going to be able to do that? I mean, it's really
it is a slippery slope because they haven't done any Pixar live actions yet.
Yeah, they haven't done any. They haven't done any of the. I don't know if they can do too many. They're not going to be able to do, you know, Monsters Inc. or any of that. So that is tough.
Well, because most of it would at the end of the day be CGI anyway. So there's not, I don't feel that I mean, I don't think there's a reason to do a lot of these live action. But I think more so for the Pixar, like you're just going to turn it back into a CGI thing anyway. You kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so I have pulled up the Spider-Man trailer, Far From Home. Now, you've already seen this trailer, right, Steve?
I have.
All right, so I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to play it over on the side because in the past, I've played it on the actual computer where we record, and I do think that the playback's a little tough. So I'm going to try to do it here off to the side, and hopefully that will help. So I'll play it long enough so that hopefully the audio will be good, and we'll be able to do this. And then here we go. So this is the Spider-Man Far From Home official trailer. Can you hear that, Steve?
Yeah.
Thank you, Spider-Man.
That was so good. Hey, sorry I'm late. Happy. You look nice.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. New dress?
Yes, it is. How'd you know?
What just happened?
Planning a trip?
Mm-hmm. Going to Europe. Cool trip.
Get your passport.
Peter Parker here to pick up a passport, please.
Mini toothpaste. Pack your suit.
I just want to go on my trip with my friends. Europe doesn't really need a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. You look really pretty.
Therefore, I have value.
No, that's not
I'm messing with you. You look pretty too.
I just want to spend some time with MJ. I think she really likes me, dude. That reminds me when I first fell in love. I had just finished my film college.
So nice to finally meet you, Spider-Man.
You're Nick Fury.
Put some clothes on. Let's go for a ride.
Is he gonna be okay like that?
Might want to turn him over so he doesn't swallow his tongue.
Nick Fury just hijacked our summer vacation.
Awesome. Got gifts, Parker, but we have a job to do. Are you going to step up or not? Your friends are in trouble. What are you going to do about it?
You don't want any part of this.
Who is that guy?
He's like Iron Man and Thor rolled into one.
He's no Spider-Man,
What is it with you and Spider-Man?
but he looks out for the neighborhood, has a dope suit, and I really respect him. What's up, dickwad?
That's pretty awesome. All right, so that, I mean, good stuff, but that kind of spoils a bit of Endgame, does it not?
It does. And, that was kind of one of the big points of contention that Disney had with Sony doing this. And, it wasn't through anybody in Disney or, Kevin Feige or, any of those people. They were all like, how about you don't, release the fact that we're coming out with this movie after our movie. And Sony was like, whatever. We'll do what we want. We don't care about your movie. And,
yeah.
But
I mean, because they could have easily brought this as the end credit scene for Endgame.
Oh, totally. Like that would have been so like, and you know what? Like, it's not like it's not like you're going to get any less hype if you do it 3 months between, after the movie versus, like for 6 months. So you could have really held off the extra couple of months and made it that much more epic and not even announced that this movie was going to happen.
Right.
But, it is what it is. But there is actually a theory out there that a lot of people think, or, that, people have actually kind of come out with and said that the theory about this movie is that it happened in an alternate universe where Peter does not get off of the bus in Infinity War.
Oh,
Because they've said that it takes place moments after Endgame or moments after Infinity. You know, it basically takes, you know, this movie takes place moments after whatever everything else happens. So the theory is that Peter never gets off of the bus.
Gotcha. But then Nick Fury, we see him disintegrate, and he's in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you know, and that's why it's kind of like, oh, well, I guess we know that Spider-Man's okay. We know that Nick Fury's going to be okay. We know, you know, all these other things, but and it's not necessarily that it takes away from anything that happens in Avengers, because it is very possible that there could be people that, one, don't come back to life, you know,
Right.
or two, that come back to life but then die again. So
Very,
you
very
know, like you know, there could be that, you know, a couple of those things, and also, you know, I mean, it's not like it's going to take away from anybody going to see Avengers. You know, like think about any other movie where you probably knew what was going to happen before walking into it. I'm sure everybody that walked into the movie Titanic,
Uh-oh.
you kind of Titanic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Steve, you lost. We lost you there, I think. Are you still here? Seems like we've lost Steve.
Right?
Now Steve's kind of
Come back.
yeah. All right, Steve's gonna go and come back. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that's that I you know, I'm kind of torn between it. A, yes, it does kill a little bit of the idea of Endgame, right? Because now you know that Spider-Man and Nick Fury, we got to figure it out, but they're gonna probably be back, right? Because you just saw them in the trailer. So now it becomes, well, what is going to be, you know, now though, I feel like there's intrigue as to see how they come back, right? You look at something like, and I think Steve was making the point about the Titanic. Going into the Titanic movie, you knew the Titanic was going to kind of disappear, right? You knew the Titanic was going down. You know the end of the story before you get there. But, and I believe this was Steve's point.
Am I back?
I'll throw him back. Steve's back, so we'll let him make his point here. But you were making the point about the Titanic.
Yeah, and just like, you know, I mean, like a lot of movies, you kind of already know what's going to happen, but you got to, you know, you still go to the movie to watch how it's going to happen. And there's always that chance that, you know, there could be some sort of twist or something, and, you know, people die all over. So,
yeah. No, you're 100% right. And, you know, one of the things, the point I made when you were off air for a sec was, you know, part of this is exciting now to see, okay, well, now at least we know a couple of these guys are going to survive. Let's see how they survive, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So, but that, I think, you know, unless there's anything else you wanted to touch on in the news this week, that is something we wanted to kind of get to. But if not, we can get to our big story of the kind of the week here. And that is basically the idea that there are new limitations placed on Disney Vacation Club resale contracts. This is a story that came out way back on January 7th, and actually this went into effect just 2 days ago on Saturday, January the 19th. And basically it says that anybody who purchases, and this is from our friends over at WDWNT.com, beginning January 19th, anyone who purchases a resale contract for one of the 14 Disney Vacation Club resorts will be limited to staying at those resorts. That means that anybody who buys a resale contract after January 19th would not be able to use their points to stay at Disney's new Riviera Resort, at the new Reflections at Disney Lakeside Lodge at Walt Disney World, and once sales for the Riviera Resort begin, those who purchase a contract for that resort on the resale market will be limited to staying only at that resort. Anyone who also purchases a resale contract with the Riviera as their home resort would not be able to use their points to stay at any existing Disney Vacation Club resorts or presumably any other future resorts. So that's pretty big changes there, is it not?
Yeah, and kind of to give everyone a little bit more background on the Disney Vacation Club and kind of how it works and stuff, to kind of actually realize how big of a deal this is. so kind of with broad strokes, because we could spend, a couple of different episodes just on DVC alone. Kind of the high end overarching thing about how DVC works. So Disney Vacation Club is Disney's version of a timeshare. And, most of the time when you talk to anybody that is within the DVC, sphere, they don't shy away from that word timeshare, especially back in the 90s. That word timeshare used to be like a bad word, but it's really not in the way that DVC sees it, and because of how it works. So when you buy into Disney Vacation Club, it is a deeded real estate interest, just like, buying a house or buying any other sort of property or anything like that. But the way that DVC actually works at its core is that whatever contract you buy, you get a certain amount of points, and whatever points you have belong to a certain resort, and it's called your home resort. So whatever home resort you actually own at gives you certain benefits at that resort. You can book at that resort you can book it further out than most other people. So for example, if you own at the Grand Floridian, you can book at the Grand Floridian Resort 11 months in advance, compared to any other Disney Vacation Club owner who can only do it 7 months in advance.
Oh, wow.
And based on, how many points you have and that kind of thing, the smaller units, like a studio or a 1-bedroom villa are going to be less points than like a 2 or 3-bedroom villa. So, and, depending on when you're coming down is going to affect it, how long you're going to come down, whether it's during the week or a weekend, there's a lot of different things that go into it. But at its core, that's kind of how it functions. However much you feel like you need to buy into, you buy a certain amount of points, it's worth a certain amount of dollars, and it kind of goes on. So as far as how and if it's worth it and that kind of thing, it is a debate, and it is definitely a conversation that you would have to have with your family or, whoever it is that you often travel with. I think it's certainly worth it. We had contemplated buying into Disney Vacation Club last year. Strongly considered it. But there were a couple of things that, for the time being decided, we were going to hold off. But the reason why this is such a huge deal is that up until now, if you were to buy, now there's 2 different ways to buy, actually. So there's the directly from Disney, which always gives you the full amount of benefits, and there are, discounts on tickets, special tickets for only Disney Vacation Club members. There's a lot of other perks and advantages and discounts and stuff that come along with being a Disney Vacation Club owner, and they've waxed and waned over the years. But that's kind of a side piece. But basically, when you go and you buy into Disney Vacation Club directly from Disney, you get full access to all the benefits. You can use your points however you want within the Disney sphere. So you can go to any of the Disney Vacation Club resorts. You can use it towards what they call the Disney Collection, which is staying at a non-DVC Disney hotel. So think like your Caribbean Beach, like the moderate resorts, Caribbean Beach or Coronado Springs or Port Orleans. You can use your points for that. You can use your points to go on a Disney cruise or to go to Adventures by Disney. You can use your points in other exchange ways that kind of branches out the use of your points and that kind of thing. But certain people that after a couple of years ago, Disney kind of started imposing restrictions on resale contracts, which means you're not buying your contract directly from Disney. You're buying it from someone that's selling their property.
Oh, okay.
Hence resale. So even if you are buying an old contract that someone has sold back to Disney, you're still buying it from Disney, even if it's an old contract. So you still get all the benefits. This is a third party that is either a brokerage firm or, someone that's, a one-to-one, I'm selling my contract to you, for example, or, you're buying it from someone else.
Right, which is usually how timeshares work. I know a buddy of mine just asked me to be there as a witness when he was giving his over to somebody else, so that you can do that. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah. So the resale is when you're buying it from a third party. You're not buying it from Disney. Anytime you buy it from Disney, you're still getting the full range of benefits.
Okay.
But when you buy, so they started imposing certain restrictions, and they kind of have been getting more and more, restricted, I guess you could say, as the years have gone on. So, one of the first ones was, you don't get the DVC ID card, so you don't get some of the benefits and discounts. Another one is you can't use it for those Disney Collection vacations, so you can't go and use your points at Coronado Springs or go on a Disney cruise or some of these other things. But so this restriction here tells you that as of January 19th, if you buy a resale contract, you cannot use it at any other resort other than whatever resort you buy at. So if you are that Grand Floridian owner right now, if you bought it directly from Disney, no problems, full range. You can go and stay at Grand Floridian or Polynesian or Old Key West or any of the other growing Disney Vacation Club properties. But here now, if you buy a resale contract and your home resort is the Riviera Resort, you can only use your points to stay at the Riviera Resort, which is a huge limitation. It's a very, very, very strong limitation. And I think, honestly, one of the reasons behind this is because of the fact that the resorts are starting to grow and grow. And I think that a few years ago, you saw a very distinct change in availability as far as Disney Vacation Club properties and availability as for the different resorts. It was a big complaint with members. It started a couple of years ago, and it's kind of only gotten worse as far as people saying that you can't, you can never find something around Christmas or New Year's, or you try and find something around other certain areas, like certain high peak seasons, and there's not a lot of availability. And there is some truth to that, but there are a lot of ways to kind of work around that we try and educate people, but for one reason or another, it just kind of never stuck. But there overall, objectively, there has kind of been a little bit of a problem lately, and I think part of that has to do with Aulani, because Aulani is the resort in Hawaii that Disney Vacation Club owners go. But if you own it Aulani, a lot of people don't go to Hawaii every year. So they're going to say, okay, well, I bought at Aulani because I wanted to be a DVC member. But then they started to make those reservations at Walt Disney World. Now, it wasn't necessarily a problem because most of the vacations, except for before Aulani, there was the Grand Californian, Vero Beach, which is also here in Florida, and Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Those were the only non-Walt Disney World properties, and they were all on the smaller side. That, if you're most of the time, most of the other properties are at Disney World. So, it wasn't that much of a stretch to say, okay, well, if I own at Saratoga Springs, I don't want to stay at Saratoga Springs. I'm going to go to Old Key West, or I'm going to go to the Grand Floridian or one of these other resorts. And then whatever property I usually go to has been opened up. And say, okay, that person that usually stays at the Grand Floridian is going to go to Saratoga Springs instead. And it was a little bit more of a trade-off, and it didn't become so lopsided. But with the addition of these other non-Walt Disney World properties, specifically Aulani, because they don't use their points as much to go to Aulani, there's that inventory that is kind of been taken up. And I think part of why this actually happened was as kind of a result to that, to say, okay, we kind of need to start placing limitations on people that aren't buying their property and using it at that same property.
Oh, gotcha. That makes a certain amount of sense, though.
It does, yeah. And I mean, and I think, anytime anybody ever starts to, okay, DVC rolls out a new policy, members get very defensive on that, because I mean, and I would too, because it's property that I own, and if you are starting to do anything that's going to devalue my investment, I'm going to have a big problem with it. So right. A lot of people are right, but this specifically only targets people that are buying resale contracts as of now, I guess, actually. But it has to be clear that the resale contract is not from DVC.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. That's great. I know that for you guys, I know you guys were remembering back when the plans for My Bachelor Party were being put in, you had talked about potentially going on a property that was specific for DVC, correct?
Yes, which is something that you can do. So because and this is also kind of a point of contention with DVC members, but it's you kind of have to make this clear that there are two ways that you can pay cash essentially for a Disney Vacation Club property because it is someone's property most of the time. Legally, the Disney Vacation Club and because it's kind of a partnership with the resorts and which we're talking two separate entities, legally there are a certain amount of rooms that have to be available for cash. That just kind of you can't sell 100% of the inventory at the resort. It's just legal, with I think it's either state or federal laws, whatever it is. Legally, this cannot happen. There's also those people that I mentioned before that go on Disney cruises or book those other ways. Even though, yes, Disney Vacation Club and Disney Cruise Line, they both have that Disney on it. We're all, high up. They're both owned by the Disney company, but they're both separate. It's like it's like me owning a Chevy dealership and you owning a Chevy dealership. We're both, it's both Chevy dealerships, but we're both going to be run very differently. And, just because you got a deal at my dealership doesn't mean that they can go across town to your dealership and get the same promotion, that kind of, and so it's a similar thing where they are different companies, their ledgers and everything, they're making different money. So when you say, okay, I'm going to go on a Disney cruise, when Disney Vacation Club has to turn around and pay Disney Cruise Line doesn't take points as currency. They take cash. So we have to find out a way to pay cash. So Disney Vacation Club has to pay Disney Cruise Line in cash. And to get that cash, they're going to take that inventory, the points that you gave Disney Vacation Club, figure out how much everything is worth, and turn around and find a space, an inventory that, wherever it is that you own, and open up that section for cash. So those are the two kind of, so it's in a sense, it's the inventory is still there, it's just that you decided to turn in, your thing. And we can't add more points to a resort. We can't double, you're not going to double charge someone points to stay when you've already charged someone else points. So you're going to charge them cash instead.
Right.
So that's where they kind of get that from. But yeah, so going back to what you had said, yeah. So one of the ideas that I had for your bachelor party was to get one of those, big Pimp Daddy 3-bedroom grand villas somewhere, because they are so cool. They're as big as houses anyway. Some of them are over 2,000 square feet, which is just about bigger than my house. So yeah, wow. Like it's crazy. 2 floors, they are like huge, and they have a lot of different games and amenities and stuff. And staying on property is always awesome. But yeah, so.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, it worked out, and when we get.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, no.
But that would have been really cool.
But yeah, with that, like I was, when we were figuring out all of the prices, they do get expensive. So I think it was like something like for what you would have paid for one person for one night at the resort, your whole thing is covered at the house that we ended up renting. So
awesome. I'm sure. Yeah. Sure, that didn't get over too hot then.
No. Yeah.
That was a good idea.
Yeah.
When I always think of timeshare in Orlando, because there's a lot of different companies that are trying to get you to do timeshare when you go to Orlando. I'll always think back to our story back in 2017. I guess it was 2017. When we came down for WrestleMania, we went to WrestleMania. We had a 4-day pass to Disney, and we had, I think we were there a long time. I feel like this was like a 10-day trip. I feel like we were down in Orlando for a really lengthy period of time, and we wanted to also do SeaWorld and also Universal. So our hotel is like, hey, if you want, we can get you really cheap tickets to SeaWorld and Universal. All you got to do is go do the whole shebang for timeshare, and I won't say the company because I don't think that's nice, but we went down to do the timeshare, and we're like, okay, we're just going to listen to this an hour, 2 hours, boom, we're out of here, and then we're going to get our tickets, and what a great investment this is going to be. We're going to save like $100. This is awesome. And we go in, and we've done this before, and we've sat down with timeshares, just know them to death, and of course the salesman is like very friendly, and then at the end they turn on you like I don't know what, but they're not happy when you are very clearly not interested. So that's what we said. And we sat down. We were very straightforward with them. Didn't want it. Last second, the salesman said to us, "Oh my God, you guys aren't going to leave this. My manager wants to talk to you. I told him you guys were recently engaged and he wants to chat with you real quick." He basically cuts the price in half. We're like, "Oh my God." We end up buying a timeshare down in Orlando. And we're just starting our payments for a wedding, right? Which was a little bougie in its own right. So that's a big investment. We don't even have a place to call home at the time. And we have now a timeshare to our name. We bought a timeshare down in Orlando. And it was, we then went to SeaWorld. And about 3 hours later, we were like, "Oh my God, what did we do? This is a nightmare." And it ruined our entire time in SeaWorld. And one of the things you guys said to us, which was, I'm sure a censored version of whatever you were thinking about how foolish we were to actually fall for this idea, was that if we wanted to do a timeshare, you would have suggested doing DVC rather than the company that we had gone with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and it is one of those things where at the end of the day, it's a decision that you have to make, because it by no means is it something that you should do at the spur of the moment, or, make a lighthearted investment, because it definitely, it is an investment, but it is one of those things where if you are those people that come down, at the very least once a year to Disney World, it's worth it. And because of the fact that with Disney World, with Disney Vacation Club, you can go, and especially if you buy it directly from Disney, you can go to all these other different places. You can go to Disneyland, you can go to Hong Kong and Tokyo, and you can use your points to stay on property there as well. And, there's another timeshare company that that DVC works with called RCI. And RCI is one of the other huge timeshare companies. And you can go literally all over the world. They have places everywhere that you can use your points for. So it's very flexible. It's one of the most flexible timeshares that I've heard of. And, with being, huge on Disney, you get all of these other extra perks and benefits and everything that just come, to anyone. I know a lot of DVC members, one that are cast members. I know a lot of cast members that are DVC members. And I know a lot of Florida residents that are DVC members. So it's partially, maybe you want a staycation. Maybe it's for, if you don't have the place to put up family members when they come, say, "Hey, I'm going to do this for," and because of the fact that the entitlement is 50 years after the resort opening date. So for some of the older resorts, you maybe only have like 25 or so years left. But if it's one of the newer ones, you still have close to 50 years worth of timeshare left, 50 years of vacations left. So, if you buy it when you're in your 30s, you're going to be, you'll have it until you're in the 80s, and you can pass it down to your kids and their kids. And, it's a great value, and it's a great experience to have. But it is a huge investment. It is not something to be taken lightly.
Right. No, and I think that was for us. Our salesman was really good, who sold us our timeshare, because we had no interest in doing it. And it was one of these things where he starts showing us photos from, he's of course a member of the company, and he starts showing us his photos. He randomly pulls out his phone and starts showing us photos from all the vacation places he had gone. And it was like, obviously he had these already in his phone, and an album that was just like, let me pull it out. And here I am in Paris. Here I am in Florida. Here I am in Africa. Here I am all over the place. So it was, hook, line, and sinker. We bought it. Thank God, though. And this is something that if you do have a spur-of-the-moment decision where you get suckered into buying one of these deals, I don't know how DVC works, but I'm sure it's the same way. There's always a cancellation policy. We were able to get on that as soon as possible, and we canceled it within the 10-day period. And thankfully we did. Which was the right thing for us at that time. But DVC certainly does sound really interesting. And, maybe sometime down the road, we have friends who are DVC members who don't even use it every year and still have no problem owning DVC. They still find great value in it. So, something that we consider.
Yeah. I mean, and I know there are a lot of members when I used to work for DVC, there are a lot of members that were members for a number of years. And whenever they had called me up, it was the first time that they were going to be coming to Disney World.
Oh, wow.
I was blown away by that. So it's, people that may have bought in California, or maybe people that bought on the cruise ship, or something like that. And they've, if you can still use your points for, going on cruises or for, going to all these other places. You don't even have to go to Disney World. It's a, it's a huge benefit. But one of the other things that I like about Disney Vacation Club is that the salesmen are very no pressure. They're very, because a lot of them will tell you, this thing, the product sells itself.
Right.
You just have to, if you do, if you're a numbers person and you're like, well, I have to make sure that this makes sense monetarily and economically for us, they're happy to go through with that with you and say, okay, how much money did you spend on your room? How much did you spend on those park tickets? Here's all the money that you could have saved for the accommodations that you were in. And here's how much money you'd be saving to get better accommodations over the next 50 years. And, when they start going through like that, in your head, you're kind of like, wow, I really need to do this.
Yeah, it's one of these things where I feel like when other timeshares, because Disney is selling Disney, so it's easy enough to be like, hey, you know what you're getting. It's not like you're, trying to do something else. When you're going and they're doing one of these deals with the other companies that you're going with, they'll try to do the same thing, and they make whatever they're selling sound a lot better than what you do. But when you leave and you think about it, the saving isn't really as much. But obviously with Disney, when you're how often you're going, it's pretty much a no-brainer if you're going very often that it's a good idea to do, despite it being an actual investment.
Yeah. And one of the things that I actually like that they just started doing also is they just started doing so it's one of the things that's more of a traditional timeshare is that guaranteed week. So you say, okay, based on, the calendar of the month, our usual travel habits, we're going to say, we're going to pick, week number X, there's 52 weeks in the year. So, and it's based on that. It's not saying I want to make sure that I always have the 3rd to the 10th of July. Let's say that. You can't say that, but you can say, okay, based on when that month usually falls, let's say I'm going to pick, the 28th week of the year. So we're always going to come down the 28th week of the year. But what they will do is they'll do a guaranteed week for the race weekends. So, for example, if you always come down for the Walt Disney World Marathon, or if you always come down for the Star Wars Marathon, or if you always come down for the Wine and Dine Marathon, which I think is probably the best one to do because Food and Wine Festival.
Wow.
You can say, okay, we want our guaranteed week to be whatever that weekend is. And they'll do really that, cool. and they'll do it. Say, okay, this is your guaranteed week. This is your guaranteed unit now, and we're also going to, you're going to get pre-registration for the race. You're going to get all these other perks and benefits for doing this as well. So that's one of the really cool things that they started doing not too long ago.
That's really awesome. Yeah, that's super good. Wow. So definitely sounds like DVC is certainly something to consider, and whether it's worth it, I mean, hey, I think that if you guys are listening to this podcast and you're listening to this show and you're into watching what we're discussing because of your love of Disney, it very well might be. It's probably worth it because it probably means that you're fanatical about Disney. It probably means you enjoy going down to the parks, and it probably means that this would have value for you. If you're somebody who, is just going to Disney for the first time, I'd say, depending how much you love it then it'd be something to consider from there.
Yeah. Or if you're just someone that really enjoys traveling. I mean,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because of that RCI, I don't think it can be understated. That's huge because it really opens up how many places you guys can go with all your travel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And something that just the last thing, something that I noticed about that is that your Disney points can be stretched a lot further for what you're thinking about at RCI than it is in a lot of other places. So you can go and think, okay, I'm going to use my Disney points and I'm going to be spending all of the points that I have and everything. You're going to be left with a lot over. You're going to be really surprised if you are a DVC owner and have never looked at RCI. Take a look, and if you're someone that likes to travel, because it's a huge value, and I think it goes it goes overlooked a lot of times.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think it sounds awesome. I think that is going to wrap us up today. Next week, first off, if you're a fan of, I'll plug our sister YouTube, so to speak. Watch Along Wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, huge week this week. It's the Royal Rumble, so a lot of stuff going up over there on that site. I'm going to the Rumble down in Arizona, so you'll get a lot of live coverage there. Tonight I'll be live streaming Monday Night Raw, so if you're watching Raw, very rare that I'm able to do this with my current job situation, but tonight I can. I'll be on the air for 3 hours watching Raw with you guys. So make sure you lock into that. But we have a lot. So I don't know with my trip to Arizona next week if we're going to be able to do a show. But the good news is that Steve and I have discussed a couple of fun things down the road that we are going to be doing here on Disney 101. Maybe some spin-off shows. We are going to be doing a review, so to speak, of a number of the Marvel movies in the MCU. You can explain it way better than I can, Steve, so I'll let you.
I mean, we're going to work out the details, but basically, we're going to start kind of going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
There you go.
And we're going to go back through the different phases. And depending on how in depth we can get into this, from phase one, we're going to pick, maybe our favorite, maybe least favorite, maybe the movie that we think moved the overall story along the most. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, kind of I forget what they're actually called.
The movies,
but in the yearbook when they like most likely to succeed, funniest, best dresser, I forget what they're actually called.
Oh, I see. I know what you mean.
Those kinds of awards.
Yeah.
I
think it's a great idea. It's one of these things where I think a lot of folks don't even pick up on the fact that if you're somebody who's just casually watched these movies time and time again, I think it's a lot of folks don't even pick up on certain little things of, hey, this is when we were first introduced to this character. This is when we were first introduced to that character. The other day, my brother-in-law was over and we watched Captain America Civil War just kind of because it was on. And I had no idea that was the first movie where you were introduced to Black Panther. I had no recollection of this. I'd seen the movie, but thought Black Panther was introduced in the Black Panther series. So, that is certainly one of them that we could revisit. So,
superlatives, that's the word, superlative. So we're going to be going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe superlatives.
There you go. I like it. So I don't know if that's going to be a part of our usual show or maybe a spin-off type deal, but a lot of fun stuff coming over here. And got a lot of love on our Splurge Things to Splurge On episode. And so that was great. So if you guys do like what you see, make sure you do leave a big like and subscribe. And make sure you follow us over on Twitter at Disney101pod. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Steve, before we wrap it up and get on out of here?
No, just we'll see you real soon. Everybody have a magical week.
And feel better, Steve. Steve was able to kind of power through this for us this week and definitely provided a lot of really great insight into Disney Vacation Club that I had no idea of. So, thank you for doing that, and hope you feel better.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. We will see you again real soon right here on Disney 101.